Welcome. Have you been given a data set and asked to provide business insights based on that data quickly? Let's take an example. So on the left, you can see that this has a list of orders. So the order ID, the dates of orders, and then the customer information, and there are more columns which will have the sales amount and so on. On the right, you have the questions that you've been asked, and you need to create a report that answers these questions. And if that's the first time you've looked at that specific data set, all you've been given is the raw data, and now how long will it take for you to create a report that will not only address this with accurate data, but also presents them in an effective way? If you answered that you could do that within 15 minutes, then please share your techniques and tools in the comment section below. If you're curious how we can do this using Microsoft Excel, I'm going to explain in this video how you can go from raw data to business insights within a few minutes for your own data set. Let me clarify a couple of things about the scope of this. First, even though I'm going to use a random sales data set that I downloaded from online to illustrate this, it can be applied to any data set. Could be in HR, it could be in IT, it could be in project management, it could be in finance, or it could be in marketing, or so on. As long as you have data which represents measures or metrics, which are things we want to measure, for example, sales, number of customers, number of employees, and so on. As long as you have columns which represent dimensions or categories by which you want to analyze. For example, number of employees by department. So department is the category or the dimension there. Sales by region. So in that case, sales is the measure, but the region is how you want to analyze it, and that's the dimension or the category. So any data set which has the measures and dimensions, you can use this template approach that I'm going to demo to get to the business insights quickly. The second point I want to make here is I have narrowed down the questions to the questions that can be answered via a bar chart. So I'm not going to exaggerate this by saying that any question can be answered, because there are certain questions which are better answered by other data visualization techniques, which we will cover in a different video. An example would be trend-based analysis, where we will be using a line chart, and we will do that in a separate video. This is about bar chart, and so we have chosen the questions which can be answered via a bar chart. So that's the limitation of this template. There are two things that the bar chart is very, very effective in answering. One is the ranking or the position based analysis. For example, which is the best selling product? So in that case, best is how you're defining the position or the ranking of products. And so bar chart is great for that. The second type of analysis, which is very effective with bar chart, is part to whole, or in other words, composition. So this is where you're saying what percentage of the orders came from the online channel. So in this case, you are more interested in the percentage or the composition rather than the actual absolute value. So these are the types of analysis where bar chart is effective and they should be used. So now, having got that scope out of the way, the next thing we want to do is to take a look at the data first. First, let's understand what the data set is about and what each record in the data set represents. So this is a sample data set that I downloaded online from a site which was providing sample data, and I have a list of order line items here because same order is available in multiple rows. This means that this is line level data. Now, to capture what this is saying, customer by name Claire placed an order on September 9th, 2019, and that's the order ID. And it was shipped to the customer on 12th of September. And this information is about, what the customer segment is and all that. And then we have the product specific information such as 2 quantity of this bookcase and 3 quantities of chairs. That is what the customer ordered and got shipped. The total sales amount, the profit, and the discounts, and the information about the product categories are available. The information about the location is also available for the customer. So this is what this data is about. Now that we know the structure of the data, the grain of the data, and a high-level overview of the different elements of the data or the columns, now let's go and take a look at the questions. Now here is the list of 10 questions that we need to answer. It's very important to always start the analysis with some hypotheses that you're going to test whether it's true or not, or some specific questions that you have that you need to find answers to. It helps a lot in having that focus on what you're after. So for example, these 10 questions are very specific questions that we need to be getting answers to. And my recommendation here is you start with the list of questions and then convert these questions into a framework that matches with the data set. So for example, I'm going to now highlight keywords in these questions. And that is how we're going to connect the questions to the data. Now the pink items are measures. The green ones are dimensions or categories or some fields that we need to use as a dimension. The brown are filters that we need to apply, and then the gray are analysis or aggregation techniques that we will have to use. So let's use the first one as an example. How much sales did we receive in first half of 2020? So here sales is what we are measuring. So that's the measure, that's very clear. H1 2020 is the filter, because we are saying in the first half of 2020, we need to know how much sales it is. So that's a filter. What date are we going to use for filtering is determined by this green thing, which is the received. So when did we receive the order? So the order date is the dimension. Even though here the question isn't mentioning the date column names, or any column names, we are tying the questions to the column names in order to be clear about what we need to go and calculate from the data. So now that is why this is green, and the gray is the analysis or the aggregation technique. So here the first question is very simple, how much sales? So we just need to total the sales. And in the second question, we are saying how many units were shipped. So again, how many? We are counting the number of units, or we are summing the quantity column here. And shipped is the dimension here, because the ship date is the date column that we need to use. And February 2020 is the filter that we are applying. So now we're going to go through all these 10 questions one by one. We're going to find the answers and write a report. So here is the report that we're going to send. I'm going to do this in a Word document, but you can do this in other applications. You can do it in PowerPoint, or just in an email that you want to send out with the answers to these questions, or you can choose the format that you're going to present. But the main thing is to get the accurate data in a visualization form, which is effective. And that's what we're going to do now. And in order to do so, first we need to get the data into our template. So I'm back again with the sample data. This is the Excel file with the sample data. And I'm going to go into our bar chart template. And in the bar chart template, there's a data sheet where we can populate or paste any data. So it could be any data that you have. And I'm going to go back here to the sample data. I'm going to just copy the whole thing. Control C for copy. So I've copied all the rows of data here. Go back to the bar chart. Now it's very important that I paste it here in column row number 2, and that's because that is where the column headers are there. So it'll tell the template what is the first column. It's the order ID, it says order date. So we have now populated it. We go to the bottom. It is almost 10,000 rows of data, and we have pasted it. Now it's time to configure. So the configuration is to tell the template which fields are used for analysis. So I'm going to say order date, we want it. It's a date column. and ship date is a date column. I want both of them. I want to analyze by the customer segment, so I'm going to choose that as a dimension, and I want to do it by region, so that's a dimension. I also want to do it by category and subcategory, and sales is a measure that I want to use. Quantity is a measure. So let's say I've done this. So now I've told the template which ones are dimensions, which ones are measures, which ones are date fields. The other ones will be excluded for analysis. You can leave it like that, or you can just do exclude also. Now, currency, I'm going to leave it as dollars. That's okay. The number of rows in our data, do you want to count it? Yeah, we can count it as number of rows, but we don't have the need at this point to use it in analysis. So I'm going to leave it as it is. The ratio or the average calculation. So one calculation we could do is total the sales and then divide it by the quantity, sum of quantity. So this is going to tell us average unit price, sales price. This is because this is the total of the sales amount and this is the total of the units sold. And when we divide it, we get average unit price. Okay, so that's all the configuration we need to do. We can jump into the insights. And this is our bar chart template. So there's a lot of stuff here, but first thing we're going to do is to filter. So we're going to do first have a bunch of filters that we can easily filter the data by. And as you can see here, it's very simple. Now I have a bunch of filters. Great. Now, what do we want to measure? So let's take the first question. How much sales did we receive in the first half of 2020? So sales is what we want to measure. And the order date is the date we want to use. And the date filter here is January 1st to June 30th because it's first half of 2020. So as soon as I've done that, you can see that the total here is calculated for me, and that is 290. So I'm going to just copy this. I'm going to just paste that here and I'm going to leave it like that. So that's the answer to that question. I'm going to save it. Now the second question is how many units were shipped in February 2020? So let's go back to our Excel file and we will now have to read the quantity because we want to know the units. And then it is in February. So I'm going to change the date again and February 1st to February 29th. And we want to know how many were shipped. And so the date should be ship date and the quantity is the measure, and it says $710 because we have chosen a currency format. So I'm going to choose the whole number, 710 units were sold. Okay. So far it's very, very basic. So 710 is the answer. Okay. Now let's go on to a little bit more complex questions. Which customer segment is the weakest in sales? So now I'm going back to the template to now find out which customer segment is the weakest in sales. So we want to use the segment as the dimension and the sales is the measure. And there is no date restriction anymore. So I'm just going to remove the date things and I'm going to keep the order date as the date. Even though we're not filtering anything, it now includes everything, all the dates. Okay, so which customer segment is the weakest is the question. So I'm going to go here and just use the analysis technique of just minimum and maximum. So it's going to highlight the minimum is the home office segment and the maximum is this. So consumer segment. So I'm going to just take this and it'll allow me to copy. Great, I've done that. So now I'm just going to go back to our Word document and now I can paste it as an image. And there we have the answer to this question, which is home office, right? So that's the answer. And now we have data to support that. That's the very effective part of it, because usually when you answer one question, they may come back with, oh, can you tell me what else about this? What about that? And so now you're actually better prepared for those kind of questions, follow-ups. Now let's go into the next question. What percentage of the sales come from each region? What percentage of the sales come from each region? So I'm going to choose region now as my dimension. And what I'm going to do now is leave the sales as my measure, no change. But I want to change the measure as a percentage because I want to display this as a percent. And I don't need to show the, the minimum, maximum type. It's just the default. And now it tells me, the percentage contribution for each region. So now I can, again, take an image, screenshot, go back to my Word document. I'm going to just paste it as an image again. There we go. So now it clearly says what percentage of this. 17% come from South, 32% from West. Okay. Which product subcategories brought in more than $200,000 in sales? Okay, so let's go back to our Excel file. Here, the important thing to remember is product subcategory is the dimension that we need. So I'm going to choose subcategory, and now it'll automatically do the subcategory. And we want to know which ones had more than 200,000 in sales. So I'm going to first change this to value and show this in currency. So one thing we can easily do is to change the formats easily. So we can now see the sales. And if I change this to 15 columns, so now you can see that I can see more values in the subcategory. And at the end, there will be an others bucket if you have more. So others includes 3 different subcategories, which automatically gets bucketed, which makes the visual a lot more easy to present. Okay, so now the threshold that we want to set here is $200,000. So 200,000. Now that's it. Now you have the answer to that question, which is how many or which product subcategories have more than $200,000 in sales. We have the answer to that now. So I'm going to paste it, and you can resize it as you need. And you can see immediately that it says there are five product subcategories as shown below. There we go. So now this is amazing to just be able to provide good supporting information for all the answers. Okay, are there any differences in sales of the product categories among regions? So let's go back to our template. And the question here is sales of categories. So first, among regions. So region is our dimension. So now we know the region, and we don't need to do, so this is basically telling us how much sales is happening in each region. Yes, great. Now they also want to know, are there any differences in among categories? So for example, let's change it to a stacked or a percentage stacked bar. And now I'm going to choose category. So what this is going to do is within each region, are there any differences in specific sales of the categories among each region? So this is going to tell us that West region total sales is $725,000, and 30% of them comes from office supplies. And you can see that they are, within 5%, they're not too far off. This is 39%. The other ones are around 34, 35, 38. So you see that all the regions are very similar when it comes to the categories that are sold within that region. Remember that we are doing a 100% stacked bar here, which means that, so I usually will take this because it's very important to have the legend as part of your visual when you paste something in a report. So I'm going to go back here. no significant difference. I understand we're not doing any statistical validation or validity here. However, from just looking at the high-level aggregated numbers, it seems like they are within a 5% difference. They're not too far off. There's nothing unusually popping up in one specific region. It's heavily towards furniture or something like that when we look at this data. Then we go into what product categories and subcategories are selling in the West region. Okay, so this one, I'm going to go back here to our template. And now we will see which products and categories, product categories and subcategories. So I'm going to choose category here, and I'm going to choose subcategory as the second dimension. And now we will choose, we don't want 100% stacked bar, we just want stacked bar. So this is going to tell us within each category what subcategories are selling, and they specifically asked for the West region. So I'm going to go into the region filter, apply West, and now you'll see everything get updated. So this is super easy, and now I can take a screenshot of this. And again, I want to make sure that I take the legend with it. Now I can go back to my Word document and paste it. So this is just telling us that which categories and subcategories are selling specifically in the West region. And from what we can see, there is, chairs, which is the biggest one, and then followed up by phones in the technology category. And then when we have the tables in the furniture category also. Now let's go to the next question. So does the corporate segment bring in more dollars per unit of products that we're selling? Because it's a corporate segment, we may expect that they may buy more expensive, larger, ticket items. So that's the hypothesis we want to test. So we're going to go back to our template. And this time, because the average dollar per unit is not a column in the data set, but remember that the template allows you to create your own calculation. So we already did, hey, average unit price is sales divided by quantity. So the template will automatically do that for us. I'm just going to remove the West filter because we don't need to restrict ourselves to West region anymore. And now instead of the sales, I'm going to use average unit price, and you'll see that now everything goes away. And that's because we can't do a stacked bar or a 100% stacked bar with that, but we can definitely do a comparison of the average unit price. And we want to compare for segments, right? So because we want to know whether the corporate segment has a much higher average dollar unit price, but it looks like it's not. Home office has a higher dollar per unit than corporate. So this is the answer that we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and once again screenshot this. We can go back to the Word document. No, that's the answer, right? And again, just for the sake of illustration here, I'm not going into writing a lot of justification or context to the data. Typically, if I know more about it, I will definitely expand on why it is, right? But just for the sake of this video, I'm just trying to answer the question as short as possible rather than elaborate on them. How many and which products contribute to most of the sales is the next question. So now this question, in order to answer it, we will use an analysis technique called Pareto Analysis. And we're going to go back to the sales as the measure, and product category is how we want to, or subcategories. Let's say we will use subcategories because category, there's only so many, and so subcategories would make more sense to analyze it this way. And so I am going to use Pareto, and here what is happening here is automatically it will, let me show percentage here. Okay, so you'll see that 9 product subcategories make up 80% of the sales. and these are those 9. But if I want this to be 90% of the sales, then we need to have 11 subcategories. Remember that there are totally 17 unique subcategories, but we only need 11 of them to reach 90% of the sales. And if I want 75%, you'll see that 8 items make up 75%. So what is most is, again, it's left to interpretation depending on the business, depending on the company. We may have a different interpretation, but here let's say we use 75%. And now I can just take an image screenshot here, and we can now say 8 subcategories make up 75% of sales. So if you think about it, less than 50% of the subcategories make up 75% of the sales. And that is the takeaway or the business insights that we get. The last question we have is, which rank does paper subcategory occupy in sales? Because we have put in a lot of marketing and promotion behind paper category recently. And so we just want to know, where does it stand in sales? And so we can use a technique which we have something called custom highlight, where we can actually choose. So paper is a subcategory. So I'm going to see if I can find paper. There we go. And now you can see from a sales perspective where paper stands in the list of products. And again, we can do the value to show the dollar value here. And this is, we have paper is out of the 15 things that we are showing here. Go back to my Word document. Okay, so now out of the 15 items that we are showing here, paper is ranked number 12. So number 12 out of 17 total subcategories is where paper is ranked. And that was the last question. So now we have actually a report that we can send out to our requester to provide them not only with accurate data, but we also have visually well-represented data to support our findings, and also something that can be presented to others as needed. So this, obviously, I was explaining a lot as I was going through this. If I was just doing it, then it would be a little bit faster, but I want to definitely cover the rationale behind why we are doing what we are doing, why we are choosing these certain types of analysis, and some recommendations on how to approach this type of request. Just to recap, we talked about going from raw data into the final report like this with answers to the business questions. And my guess would be it may take about 15 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes at the most, to actually prepare it, test it, and then send it out. So even if you extend it, let's say it's in 30 minutes, that's still very, very efficient to go from a brand new raw data set to actually getting a report out effectively and accurately within 30 minutes to the requester. If you have any suggestions on how to improve this, if I've made any things that you think we can be doing in a different way and better, please post them in the comment section below. I'm always looking for ways to improve the solutions and the tools. I look forward to your feedback. So in this video, I covered those 10 questions. However, I didn't necessarily go into all the features that are built into this template automatically to reduce the time it takes to create such analysis. So please check out the template. I will be providing the link to in the video description below. You can visit the product page to find out more things. I also have a step-by-step tutorial on how to use this template from start to finish. So please check them out in the video description. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching.